this began to change in about 1992. And it began to change, particularly in the United States, because of Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was young, Bill Clinton played the saxophone, Bill Clinton had gay friends, and he didn't deny it. And Bill Clinton made to claim that if he became president of the United States, he would allow gays and lesbians to serve openly in the United States military. And that idea brought so much cultural discourse about the position of gays and lesbians in modern society that, as with discourse does, began to erode at homophobia. It was this beginning, this snippet of change in the air that at the age of 25 in 1993, I picked up on. For the first time in my life, I thought, maybe I could come out of the closet. Maybe I could be honest about who I am and no longer go home fearing every night that people would find out I was gay. So as Joy has told you, I came out of the closet as America's first openly gay high school coach, and it didn't go so well, and you heard that my athlete was horribly, horribly beaten. Well, times have changed. By the time I began doing research on this formally in 2000, times have changed dramatically already. I've done a considerable amount of research on this over the years. These are research projects that I've conducted in the United States. The majority of research I do is called ethnography. By that I mean that I become part of the student's world. Most of the people I study are university men. I do this for two reasons. One, ease of access. It's easy for me to get permission to study university men. And two, university men are going to be tomorrow's leaders and tomorrow's policymakers. So if I can figure out what's going on with university men, I probably have a good idea what's going to go on in the dominant culture in the years to come. Of course, university women are the leaders too, but I only study them. More important than that, I study team sport athletes. Because if you find a diminishment of homophobia in team sports, it most likely already exists in the culture at large. But it's not just the United States that I've conducted these studies. I've also conducted an equal amount of studies in the United Kingdom. Now, I don't conduct all these studies alone. I have literally a posse of graduate students that help me conduct this research, and about 10 of them are here tonight. And it's very, very nice to have them here so I can honor them for helping me put together this research. Together, we've published about 25 articles, peer-reviewed articles, on the plight of both gays in sport and heterosexual men in sport. And I'd like to now share with you some of the results. Results that I call inclusive masculinity. That hierarchy for youth in Britain today, it doesn't exist. It is now a horizontal hierarchy, not hierarchy, a horizontal stratification. It's not even stratification, it's just horizontal. You've got your jocks, and you've got your nerds, and you've got your musicians, and you've got your emos, and you've got all kinds of different groups and different ways of being masculine, and they're all valued. And one of my PhD students who's here tonight is now a doctor at Brunel University, Mark Variety, has just done some research on 3-6 forms where he found that what was most important to you today is that they have the social fluidity to navigate all of these groups. That's what makes one popular. That they can be, to use a phrase, a man of the people. So things have changed. Homophobia is no longer valued amongst youth. In fact, homophobia is becoming rather stigmatized. Well, there's three assets of heterosexual inclusive masculinity that really highlight. It's the proof that homohysteria is a theoretical concept that works, because we no longer see men acting in these polarized, hyper-macho ways at sixth form and university level anymore. And the three ways that I prove this is to show that, one, heterosexual men are immensely tactile with each other. Very touchy-feely with each other. In fact, 90% of undergraduate heterosexual men in the United Kingdom have kissed another man on the lips. Now, they've removed the sexual component of these kisses. They're more than the French sort of thing. It's more of a full-on kiss. And they do this as a way to say to their mate, you've made it into my select group of friends. You are close and dear to me, and I love you, and I'm going to seal that with a kiss. And this came from sport. For the first time, sport did something transgressive against the polarization of genders. It started with professional athletes kissing on the lips after scoring a goal, and that made it okay for them to do it in the pubs, And then athletes who weren't professional athletes began to follow that, and here's what's really unique. Because it began in the sport of football, football players are not marks like rugby players. When they're in street clothes, you can't really tell they're a football player. Now, I don't mean Rudy, because anybody recognize him in any pub. I mean just your average, sixth form and university football players. And so they took these kissing behaviors with them into the pubs as unmarked athletes, and that made it acceptable for others to do it as well. These kissing behaviors are now occurring at sixth form level as well. So not only are they kissing each other, but they're embracing each other. They're telling each other, mate, I love you. By the way, these photos are all posted on Facebook. If you have a hard time believing what I'm saying, I encourage you, if you have a friend who's a university student, ask him to go onto his university account on his Facebook, and you will see photos of him and his friends doing these, most likely. So not only are they embracing each other, but they're also beginning to embrace their gay friends. When interviewed, 120 of these men, 40 to 50%, I forgot what the number was, it's somewhere between there. About 50% of them said that they will also kiss their gay male friends. And they're not afraid of being thought gay for it. The other 50% say that no, they won't kiss their gay male friends because they're afraid that they might send the wrong message to the gay friend. But this is amazing. Well, heterosexual men are also cuddling each other. In fact, it is no longer stigmatized for heterosexual men to share a same bed. We just did some research where we found that 29 out of 30 team sport athletes have shared another bed with a man. Many of them are very proud of the fact that not only do they share the bed with another man, but they cuddle. They take pride in being able to have that type of physical intimacy with their friends. Men are much more tactile and cuddle with each other in places other than just sharing a bed. They're able to give each other longer hugs. They're very proud of this intimacy. Of course, I think it's a very wonderful thing. But above all of it, it means that heterosexual men are developing what they're calling bromances. An intense form of intimacy between two heterosexual males. And bromances are quite popular, both in the United Kingdom and the United States. In fact, not only are they intimate with each other, but they now rather enjoy going clubbing with each other. Heterosexual men will now go to dance clubs and dance together with each other. Now, for some of you who are perhaps nearer to my age, the idea of heterosexual men dancing together is just unimaginable. I don't know what it was like in Britain in the 1980s. I know that when I was in grade school, the boys sat on one side of the gym and the girls sat on the other side of the gym, and you try to work up the guts to go over and ask somebody to dance. Well, those days are gone. Now the dance floor is just a massive swarm of people having a good time, regardless of gender, regardless of sexuality. Essentially, what we're returning to with heterosexual men is an ancient form of brotherhood, an ancient form of love that the Greeks so admired. And this is my partner and I, Grant. We're modeling a statue, of course, of that type of fraternal love that the Greeks so valued. Things are getting better. And if things are getting better for heterosexual men, well, let's look at how they're getting better for gay male athletes. My research on 16 to 22-year-olds, so these are high school to university gay athletes, has some tremendous findings. The first is that increasing numbers of gay athletes are coming out of the closet. When I did my first research on 26 openly gay high school and university athletes in the United States about 10 years ago, I had a difficult time finding them. I just published some research just last month interviewing another 26 heterosexual gay men in sport, men who identified in the same procedures as before, but I found them like that. And not only did I find them, but I found half of them were team sport athletes. Rugby players, and basketball players, and baseball players. Not just the swimmers and divers like in my previous research. Not only are more gay men coming out of the closet, but when gay men come out of the closet, it promotes team cohesion. Gay athletes are not a threat to the cohesion of a team. Quite the opposite. Gay athletes promote a sense of unity on a team. Now, it's interesting the way this operates is because while these heterosexual men, their teammates, have lost their overt homophobia, they're still rather heterosexist. And by this I mean that there's still a presumption that one is straight until told otherwise. To give you an example of how heterosexism still operates in our culture, after this presentation, I could go down to a pub, I could meet 4 men who are strangers, I could get to know them, and I could say, "Are you married? Do you have a girlfriend? And that would be perfectly acceptable. It would be acceptable to assume their sexuality. It would not be acceptable for me to ask, are you gay, straight, or bi? And then to say, do you have a partner or a wife? Right? So that's the operation of heterosexism. Because these men are still heterosexist, what happens is this. It's kind of unique. That when the gay men come out to them, their straight teammates think, he's disclosing something personal. And what we know about disclosure is disclosure brings people closer together. Women have done this for years. We used to say, do you know how two men have a friendship? They drink beer together. Do you know how two women have friendship? They tell secrets to each other. Well, coming out is viewed as telling a secret. And what that does is it elicits a positive response from their heterosexual teammate, who then tells the gay male a secret of some form. And it bonds them closer together. The next finding is that these discussions that occur on teams are breaking down both sexual and gendered binaries. In fact, I just got back from the United States completing ethnography on 3 different soccer teams, where we found that about 95% of the soccer team players, when you interviewed them, they considered themselves bisexual. Not by sexual desire, but by emotional romance. They said, I love my mates. I love my best friend as much as I love my girlfriend. And if love is part of sexuality, then I'm bisexual. Many of them call this metrosexuality. But what's happening amongst the youth is the intellectual ideas that the academics have been talking about of breaking down binaries is beginning to emerge. There's also amazing symbolism of symbolic support, some really good stuff going on with these athletes. I'm going to give you 2 examples that I think are really heartwarming. The first is this. The first comes from Ryan. He was a crew member, a rower in Southern California. Ryan came out of the closet to his team, and all was great and all was wonderful, and I was interviewing Ryan about it, and sort of one of the areas that I find that some homophobia could emerge was on overnight trips, particularly when they had to share a bed with another teammate. And Ryan stopped me and said, oh, I know what you're talking about. He said, on our first overnight trip, there was 3 of us assigned to the room, and there was 2 beds. 2 straight teammates and myself. So he said, well, you might think it makes sense to put the 2 straight teammates in one bed and me in the other,